Hello, hello. Can everybody please be quiet? Good evening, everyone. Welcome. I'm Susan Clark, Vice President of Voter Service with the League of Women Voters of Edina. Welcome to the Candidate Forum for 49B. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan volunteer organization that encourages citizens to participate in government. While we as a league do studies and take stands on issues, we do not endorse or support political parties or candidates. The views expressed in this forum are those of the candidates, not those of the League of Women Voters. And the sponsorship of this forum is not an endorsement by the sponsor of any candidate. We have two forums this year, this one, which is 49B, and the one for City Council on September 30th at 7 p.m. I'd like to introduce our moderator for the night, Alice Mormon, and she is with the League of Women Voters, Minneapolis. Thank you.
Put my mic on. Thank you, Susan. Before we get started, I'd like to ask each of you to turn off your cell phones and any other electronic devices that you may have. One of our candidate forum audience rules is that there is no photography or audio-visual recording in the forum room. So we hope you will abide by that. Thank you. The purpose of this evening's forum is to provide an opportunity to hear the candidates discuss issues that are important to you. We will try to cover as many issues as possible in the time we have. If your questions are not addressed tonight, feel free to contact the candidates directly. All candidates who filed for office and who will be on the November 4th ballot were invited to this forum. I'd now like to explain the rules and format for tonight's forum. Speaking order was assigned before the forum and will rotate with each question. Each candidate will have 1 minute to make an opening statement and 2 minutes to answer questions sent out in advance. Candidates will then have 1 minute to answer each question submitted by the audience and 1 minute to make a closing statement. A league volunteer will time candidates' responses and indicate to candidates when they have 1 minute, 30 seconds remaining, and when they must stop. And they're in the front there. Audience questions must be in writing and handed to a volunteer who is wearing a league button. Only the moderator will ask the questions. The League of Women Voters of Edina determines which questions will be asked and attempts in good faith to cover the topics of interest indicated by the submitted audience questions. All written questions become the property of League of Women Voters Edina. The forum is being videotaped. Please hold your applause until the end of the forum. And now to introduce our candidates for 49AB, right? B. It said AB. It's just B, right? Thank you. That makes it clearer for me. It's on right in front if you're looking at the screen. Thank you. Paul Rosenthal and Barb Sutter. And I guess the order are you first?
I guess so.
Okay. So you have 1 minute with your opening remark, Paul.
Thank you, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for putting this event on. It's always phenomenal. I just want to thank Edina, Bloomington, Minnetonka, and Eden Prairie for the support that they've given me. It's been truly remarkable. I have 2 kids in public school. I have a wonderful wife that works in public school, and I really care deeply about our community. I've had the privilege to work as a vice president of a commercial real estate company in New York City for 14 years. 30 seconds, not much. My background is in finance. I trade foreign currency for a living, and I really care deeply about our kids. And that's why I'm here, and thank you for having us.
Thank you. Barb, please.
I want to thank the League of Women Voters and Edina for sponsoring this forum this evening. I also want to thank my supporters for coming to encourage me, and I especially want to thank the people of Edina, Bloomington, Minnetonka, and Eden Prairie who have come out tonight, and in the hopes of being better informed about the election. My hope is that the questions that were asked will touch on your areas of interest and concern. I'm in this race because I'm committed to a better future for our state. I'm concerned about how our taxes are spent, and I'm concerned that our schools need to return to a focus of excellence. I'm concerned that our state's experiment in healthcare is not leading to greater choice or lower costs. And I'm concerned that our state is growing less affordable for our veterans and our retirees. If these are also your concerns, I want to work with you and for you and address them in St. Paul. Thank you.
Thank you. The first question is one that was sent to the candidates in advance, and I will ask Barb first to reply. The question was, what do you consider to be the biggest issue facing the state, and how would you address it as a member of the House of Representatives?
I think the biggest concern for me is one-party control. Minnesota has been a well-governed state because we've had the checks and the balances of divided government. If we are indeed a divided state, half of our citizens right now have no voice. So it would be my role to be a part of the legislature that would bring balance back. We need an efficient and effective state government that's more responsible with our money and respects our finances and represents all Minnesotans. Those of us running and are elected owe it to the people to listen to them and to represent them. With my background in accounting and tax preparation, I wish to help establish a tax climate that enables people to have their homes, raise their families, find jobs or run businesses, and retire right here in Minnesota. That's truly resonating with the voters that I talk to. One of my proposals would be getting rid of taxes on Social Security income for seniors and the disabled, something my opponent did not support in the past legislative session. I'd also hope to promote an education system with access to high-quality choices that will prepare our students for post-secondary education and jobs in this extremely competitive 21st century. Right now, 1 in 5 of our students require remedial help when beginning college here in our state schools. As your representative, I would support keeping academic standards high for students and for teachers, promoting vocational education as an option for our students. I would intend to be your voice for excellence. Finally, I'd like to help build an economy that promotes growth and job opportunities for all, but with the least amount of government intrusion in our lives.
Thank you. Paul, would you like to respond?
Sure. For me, the biggest thing going forward is to continue with the economy and jobs. Our state is very fortunate. We have one of the lowest unemployment rates in the country at 4.3%. We're growing more jobs than most states in the country. So we could continue to build on that so that we get to a point where we once were, where unemployment was 2.2% in the 90s. I'm the co-chair of the Small Business Caucus, which is a bipartisan group of about 30 of us. We toured the state last year, going from small businesses in the Twin Cities to outstate to farmland, and we came up with a bunch of ideas for bills, whether it be reducing regulation and permitting. I personally carried the Angel Investment Tax Credit, which goes a long way to help these companies that come out of the University of Minnesota to get the start that they need, mostly high-tech, biomed types of companies. So as I see our work going forward, we need to continue this, and we need to do it in a bipartisan way. I have one of the most bipartisan records in the House. Just about every bill that I have has a Republican co-author, and that gets us working together from the start. And I think that's what the people of Minnesota want. They don't care about one party. They care about government that works.
Thank you. The first question will go to you, Paul. It has been predicted that with higher mileage cars and a younger generation that is driving less, the gas tax will not be sufficient to fund transportation infrastructure in the future. How would you fund these needs?
Well, transportation infrastructure is intertwined with everything that we do as a state, from having a good business climate to getting families to and from work, getting goods to and from market. Every day, a lot of us drive on Highway 62. We know that about 2 o'clock, you try and find alternate routes. At least I do. So the needs are out there. Our bridges are crumbling, our roads are crumbling, and if we don't invest in them now, it just will cost more later. The gas tax that people are talking about, it's the same amount whether we're paying $10 a gallon at the pump or we're paying $1 at the gallon at the pump. We get the same amount of money. It doesn't matter. So we're going to have to look into efficiencies first, and then look into other ways to help build out our transportation infrastructure, because it's critical to the survival of our state as a leader.
Thank you. Barb?
Could you repeat the question,
I'd be happy
please?
to. It has been predicted that with higher mileage cars and a younger generation that is driving less, the gas tax will not be sufficient to fund transportation infrastructure in the future. How would you fund these needs?
Well, first of all, I would say that before we'd ever look at an increase in gas tax, when the gas tax was passed, I believe that was in 2008, MnDOT at that time committed to finding 15% in efficiencies. It's 2014, and they have not lived up to that at this point. The gas tax was phased in during the summer of 2012, so my answer is that we need to look at other options. We need to prioritize our spending and not merely say we don't have the money for it. I think we need to look where the money can be found.
Thank you. This is a question on environment, and it will go to Barb first. Do you believe that reduce, reuse, and recycle is a critical issue for our state? And if so, what legislation would you support for this?
I would have to say, in my personal life, speaking for us, we have recycled all of our lives. We have, it's just a lifestyle that we have, so I certainly would say I would support it. As to more legislation, I think that's a hard question for me to answer. I would have to look at whatever would be proposed and put before me. I'm very careful about the idea of proposing new legislation. I think there is always the problem with unintended consequences when we go there. So at this point, I would have to say I would have to be there to see what would be proposed, but I certainly urge everyone to live a life of recycling and reusing.
Thank you. Paul?
Well, I too, in our family, we recycle as much as we can. And the good news is we have a generation. I have a 14-year-old and a 12-year-old. They're horrified when they see litter on the street. They'll go pick it up and they'll go put it in a recycling bin. So the good news is we have a generation coming up behind us that has already bought into this. And it's not really something you need to buy into. It makes sense. As far as specific legislation, I would have to see what the legislation said before I would support it or not. But certainly moving towards reducing waste is something we all should be happy to do, and we all should continue to strive to do better at.
Thank you. The next question is on reproductive rights, and it'll go to Paul first. With laws concerning a woman's right to choose under attack in many states, what is your specific position on choice? Would you favor restrictions?
No, I would not favor restrictions. I am pro-choice. It doesn't mean that in my own life I would choose to do that, but I don't think I have the right to tell a woman what to do with their, or a family what to do with their.
Thank you.
I'm not done.
Oh, I'm sorry. You paused.
This last session, I was a co-author of the Women's Economic Security Act, and we got to be really careful. You know, people living in this district, women working, make 71 cents on the hour. So whether we're restricting their rights to do things with the doctor or restricting their rights in the workplace, I support women.
Thank you. Barb?
I think we currently have laws in place on the issue of abortion, and I'm not aware of any legislative plans at this point to change it. So the issue is not really a black and white one for me. As I indicated, we're a nation of laws, but I think we're also a people of compassion. I personally value all life. However, I do understand parents, and when they make the decision to terminate a pregnancy due to fatal fetal condition or the health of the mother. That being said, I personally don't support abortion as a form of birth control. I think we need to keep the Gosnells of the world under control.
Thank you. The next question is on fiscal responsibility, and we'll start with Barb.
Okay.
How will you improve fiscal responsibility at the state level?
In terms of fiscal responsibility, are we talking taxes? Are we talking spending?
Government spending.
Government spending. That's a big one. Over the past 2 years, state spending has increased by more than 12% at a time when our state's economy has only grown by 4%. That's the largest budget that we've had in this state's history. I think we need to clearly prioritize family needs over government wants. Government spending is continually on the rise while our families' incomes are stagnating. My goal would be to allow families to keep more of their hard-earned dollars. Unfortunately, my opponent has been a part of this fiscal irresponsibility. He has voted for every budget, but then appears to be let off in voting for the tax increases with which to pay for them. So that's a problem as well. To make informed decisions, lawmakers need to have a detailed, accurate, regular assessment.
Thank you. Paul, your comment? The question actually is, how will you improve fiscal responsibility on the state level? But they're talking about government spending.
Thank you. And Barb, you're welcome to call me Paul, and unless you want me to call me your opponent, that's fine too. But may I call you Barb?
You certainly may.
Oh, thank you. You know, as a proportion of spending today, government's portion has gone down. We've been in decades of cuts and cuts and cuts and irresponsible disinvestment in our state. Barbara's right, I did vote against the tax bill, and I did it for two reasons. Once I pledged that I would not vote for a tax bill that contained business-to-business taxes. I did that early on. I stood by it, I fought for it, and I got it repealed. I also thought that the tax bill was too big, and that we didn't need to raise that much money without finding efficiencies. And it turns out I was right. We ended up giving some of the money back. And obviously, efficiencies are the first place you look for money, but if you can't find it to meet government's basic needs, then you need to go out and raise some revenue.
Yeah, I let you finish your sentence. So.
Thank you.
And the next question will start with you, Paul. What is your opinion about climate change, and what could Minnesota do about it?
My opinion on climate change is that it's real, it's happening, and we see it every day. Minnesota has taken great strides in wind energy. I was an early, on your energy bill, you're allowed to check a box that says you can take a certain percentage from wind. I checked that box about 12 years ago when it was more expensive, Now it's less expensive. So I think we need to look at climate change as an issue that we continually are moving forward with, whether it's wind, whether it's solar, whether it's biomass. I don't have a particular limit, but if the efficiencies are there and if the technology is there, we should be going in that direction.
Thank you. Barb?
Well, I'm going to be bold and, or some may consider it too bold, and say that I don't have a deep, passionate belief in climate change. That doesn't mean that I believe in abusing the environment. I think I've already spoken about recycling, reusing, and I feel very strongly about those things. The driving force behind the current green energy policy is the reduction of carbon emissions in an effort to address global climate change. Minnesota, however, quite frankly, is simply too small to make a difference in that regard. If you eliminated all of Minnesota's emissions tomorrow, growth in global emissions would replace the state's emissions in about 1 month. So without global action, the cumulative actions of Minnesota and the United States are really quite meaningless.
Thank you. The next question is about gun violence, and we'll start with Barb. Gun violence has increased across the country with some well-publicized mass shootings, while murders, accidents, and suicide continue to happen every day. What would be one step that you would suggest to reduce gun violence?
It seems to me that, quite frankly, the examples I believe I heard you give in terms of gun violence, it seems to me it would be very valid to address the underlying issues of mental illness. And that's probably where I would go with that.
Thank you. Paul?
I am the vice chair of the Public Safety Committee, and we held 3 days of hearings on this issue regarding background checks. And we weren't even able to pass simple background checks out of committee. This is for gun shows where people can sell guns to whoever they want and just walk out of there with no accountability. I strongly believe in the rights of people to own guns, but I also believe that we have to have some responsibility. As was said in the last forum, we did pass some gun control measures that had to do with domestic violence. I think that was a start. I think Barb's right, mental illness is another area. But I do think we have to think about this broadly. We're not going to take away people's guns, but we do need to make sure that we have the safest system out there. And in my mind, background checks at gun shows is a simple test. After chairing those committees for 2 days, I have to stop.
Paul, the next question will go to you first. It's on housing. Despite the economic recovery and the reduction in foreclosures, there are still too many people in Minnesota who are paying over 50% of their income for housing and transportation combined. What do you see as the state's role in expanding good quality, affordable housing in all areas of Minnesota?
When during my first term, I served on the Housing Committee, and I carried a bill, the Homeless Youth Act, and it was a bill that would take kids from the suburbs, from Edina, from Bloomington, from Eden Prairie, from Minnetonka, who were sleeping on the streets and had no place to go and would get to school. And so I was very, very passionate about that, and I was very proud of it. And it passed the House with bipartisan support, and Governor Pawlenty vetoed the funding for it. So I think we need to look at our housing as holistically as possible. We need to provide for our young people. The city of Edina just approved a plan for a building on 66th Street that will help homeless youth. And You know, it's a problem. I don't know all the answers. I work very, very hard toward solutions. So I would look to my colleagues on both sides of the aisles to help. It certainly is a problem, and it's a problem that's not going away, and it's a problem that's really sad in this day and age.
Barb?
I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sure. Despite the economic recovery and the reduction in foreclosure, there are still too many people in Minnesota who are paying over 50% of their income for housing and transportation combined. What do you see as the state's role in expanding good quality, affordable housing in all areas of Minnesota?
Well, certainly the best thing that we could do to help people is to create the kind of economy where one would hope they would be doing better and there would be more of an affordability option for them. Quite frankly, the most affordable housing in our nation is in the states and regions that have the least government involvement in land and housing markets. Regulation really does make it very difficult to respond to changes in the demand that people have. Multi-family houses cost more than single-family homes. It's a fallacy to think that building apartments or quads helps people. I just don't think we should be forcing more people to live in multifamily housing and reducing their personal mobility in the name of sustainability. So my answer would be to improve their lot in life in terms of their economic situation.
Thank you. The next question is on jobs, and it starts out with Barb. What can Minnesota do to attract and retain more high-tech businesses and talent?
I would first of all want to help build an economy that would promote growth and job opportunities for all, and again with the least amount of government intrusion in our lives. And I think besides tax reform, that would mean overhauling and streamlining our regulatory environment. That increases costs for everyone and really does impact our job market and our growth. The idea would be to look at, in terms of over-regulation, which is something I hear about when I talk to business owners and does keep them from wanting to work here, is looking at the compliance costs, the return on investment. I think our regulations need to be streamlined and predictable, and we need to reduce duplication. I think if some of that is cleared out of the way, I think you would see more businesses heading our way and not wanting to leave the state.
Paul? The question is, what can Minnesota do to attract and retain more high-tech businesses and talent?
First of all, Minnesota attracts talent right now from everywhere, from around the country. You hear these different numbers being thrown about, but if you look at the business climate, some would say, or the way you do business, Minnesota has more Fortune 500 companies here per capita than any state in the nation. We have the 8th best place to do business according to Forbes magazine, the 4th best place to do business according to a new CNBC poll. And that's just not looking at one thing. That's looking at the state as a whole. That's looking at our education system. That's looking at our infrastructure. That's looking at our entertainment. That's looking at why people want to live here. So if you look at it as a whole, Minnesota is doing very well. Can it do better? Absolutely. Should we do better? Yes. And I've been working very, very hard on these issues, and I will continue to do so.
Thank you. The next question, we'll start out with Paul. What is your view on the necessity for more identification when people come to vote? What I have is 7 lines, and I'm trying to simplify it. Basically, voter ID, asking for some additional information when, like a driver's license, when someone comes to vote.
Personally, I think voting is our most fundamental right, so I do not support photo ID for voting. Our state has gone through a lot of election changes over the last couple of years to make it easier for people to vote. You know, there's a lot of people out there that don't have a driver's license. There's a lot of people out there that don't have a college ID. They don't have something that is recognized by the state, but they do have the fundamental right to vote, and we should not ever forget that. You know, fraud has been brought up time and time again, but it is so minimal, if any, that to restrict the many for the one or two instances is not something that I would support.
So, Barb?
Well, voter integrity, excuse me, is of supreme importance. The thing is that if one person votes illegally, that disenfranchises your vote. So we now have voters registering on Election Day. They vote, and their eligibility is verified after the election. I've served as an election judge for over 8 years, so in that case, I know of what I speak. When it's too late, individuals can't be confirmed as eligible, and we have had ineligible felons voting in Minnesota. It happened during the Franken-Coleman election. I supported and I continue to support the use of voter ID. To me, our vote is too dear, and people have fought and died for my right to cast my ballot.
The next question is on campaign finance, and we'll start with Barb. What is your stand on campaign finance, the campaign finance disclosure bill that was proposed in the last session?
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to take a bye. I am unfamiliar with that legislation.
Okay, Paul?
I'm sorry.
I never got to take a vote on that. But in my mind, our system is broken. You know, we have millions of dollars being spent every day on negative ads, and people I think, are sick of it. On the state level, even on the state house level, hundreds of thousands of dollars have been poured into races by corporations and PACs and all that kind of thing. So if I had my way, which I won't and usually don't get, every race from this race on up would get a certain amount of money, and you could use it to attack your opponent, or you could use it to tell people what you're going to do to make Minnesota a better place. And you know, so I do think we need to have some campaign finance reporting. It's gotten out of hand. The money spent in politics is ridiculous, and I would love to see that money better spent on our children, if possible.
Barb, I'm going to ask you the follow-up question and then see if Paul has more he wants to say, because the follow-up question is, what is your view on big money in politics? And I think Paul just let us know how he felt about that.
Well, having been the recipient of 9 wonderful pieces in the last 3 weeks concerning my candidacy, it certainly on a personal level doesn't make me happy, but unfortunately I think it falls under the right of free speech, First Amendment, so to speak, and I think it seems to me that the more legislation that we've passed in this regard, the worse it has gotten. So I'm not sure what the answer is.
Do you have any more to add to that?
Yeah, you know, I would just like to say that, in my opinion, Citizens United was the worst Supreme Court decision in my lifetime. And corporations are not people. They don't get flu shots. They don't go to the doctor. And they should stay out of our elections. I've been running for office for a few terms now, and I've been the subject of these ads. I've been in dark alleys with smoke. I've been in bathtubs full of money. I've been made school kids cry. And, you know, this kind of stuff, people are too smart for this. It doesn't work, and it keeps going and going and going. And every year it's more and more and more. So in my mind, you know, it's money wasted. And I would like us to see that money put to a much better use.
So the next question is healthcare, and I'm going to go to Barb. What do you like about the what do you like about MNsure Healthcare Exchange? If you are opposed to it, what would you propose as a realistic alternative?
Well, Minnesota's always had quality health care at low cost. Minnesota was a national leader in health care. Only 9% of Minnesotans were uninsured prior to MNsure, but 3/4 of those were eligible for public health programs. That left 100,000 people without access to insurance prior. That's not to say we don't care about those people, but there were certainly programs in place to take care of them. We don't want people uninsured, but I don't think we want what we have now. We are increasing costs. It started with a $160 million website that still doesn't work. People are seeing higher deductibles. They have fewer choices. Some women in Minnesota have actually the largest rate hikes in the nation. People are losing their doctors and their current plans that they chose. 280,000 people have been forced off of their health insurance plans. Privacy concerns have already proven true. 1,600 Social Security numbers were released by MNsure. And obviously, I have to stop, but I could go on.
Paul?
Obviously, the rollout of MNsure or Obamacare, whatever you want to call it, was not smooth. But we did make a choice here. We could have taken the federal plan, which was a one-size-fits-all plan, or we could have developed our own. And Minnesota decided to develop our own plan, and it came out to be the cheapest rates in the nation. That said, the rollout was terrible. However, if the Republican legislature in the prior 2 years had worked with the governor and really started to ramp things up in a way that was not last minute, I think a lot of these things could have been ironed out beforehand. Is it the website doing well? No. Can it be better? Absolutely. Should it be better? Absolutely. But we need, there's 40% less people are uninsured today than before. And, we have it, we got to make it better. And I think in the end, costs will come down because we're seeing people in the doctor's office, not the emergency room.
Thank you. This will be the last question, and we'll start with Paul. It's basically a question on education and what you feel the legislature should do to support education in Minnesota. And there's 3 different ideas on these questions, so you can either respond your own way or answer some of these. One is a position, do you have a position on school vouchers for private schools? Do you have any ideas on past measures such as IOUs to school districts? And any ideas on having the teachers teach to the test?
What was the middle one?
Which one?
The middle one?
The middle one was the IOUs, borrowing money from the school districts.
I'll actually answer all 3 and try not to stray off into a 4th. School vouchers, no, I think public money stays in public schools. I've had that, that's a core belief of mine. IOUs is a terrible way to balance the budget, and it steals money from our kids, and our kids are our future. We just paid back $2.8 billion that was taken from our schools to balance the budget. And that is not balancing the budget. That is hiding things, that is moving things around, and that is basically lying. Just locally, Edina, $18 million was taken in the shift, and that's disgraceful to me. Teaching to the test, I think kids learn at different times, and I'd like to see less testing and more individual time in classroom with the teachers, because some kids progress at different times, and that's what we need to measure, not a standardized test.
Thank you. Barb?
Well, some things are really clear to me as I talk to residents of our district. For one, they are very proud of their schools. They're deeply involved in their children's and in their grandkids' education. The teachers in the district that I've spoken with are devoted to their profession, and they want the best for the students. I think one of the things that drove me to enter this race is that, in contrast, the Democrats in the legislature, including Paul, are undermining our goal of achieving excellence in education for all of our children. Democrats eliminated academic graduation requirements, lowering the standards for graduation. They also lowered the bar for teachers in the classroom by weakening the requirement that they pass an academic skills test for licensing. They also blocked Republican attempts to reform the system and ensure that no child is stuck with an ineffective teacher for 2 years in a row. So my goal, again, would be to be your voice for excellence in education.
Thank you. Now it's time for your closing remarks, and you have a minute, and we'll start with Paul.
Thank you to the League for putting on this event. I've been attacked here a couple of times. It's interesting. I approached the legislature not as a Democrat, not as a Republican, not as a Green, not as anything. I like to get things done. And I have proved over and over again that I have the ability to cross the aisle and work with the other side and engage in true, meaningful conversations. Barb is a co-chair of the SD 49 Democrats. She's not going to be the one to reach across the aisle. Republican, sorry. I saw your horror. And truly, Minnesota and this country is sick of people having these ideological positions that they won't move off of. The extremes are killing us. I like to work in the middle, and I like to get things done. And I've proved over and over again that I can not only get things done, but I can work with both sides of the aisle, and I think that's what Minnesota wants and Minnesota deserves.
Barb.
Let me just say that as Senate District Co-Chair, one of my strengths was bridging the divide between the two ends of our party, the far right and the moderates. And so I think I'm well placed to work with people from various walks. But I've heard it said that this election is a referendum about nothing, that there's apathy or resignation among the electorate. We as voters should not accept this. We need to urge our neighbors, our colleagues, and our friends to vote. Vote for competence in our government and our elected officials. Insist on a vision of economic growth and social balance. Call for a future where all of our kids receive a strong education, a future where our workers can benefit from a thriving business climate, a future where our older citizens do not need to move to enjoy reasonable income and property taxes. These are what I stand for. I hope in this election that you will stand with me. Thank you.
That concludes our forum for the evening. I would like to thank the candidates for participating and for willingness to participate in the democratic process by running for office. Thank you to the League of Women Voters of Edina for sponsoring this forum. This forum has been taped for broadcast on Edina Community Channel 16 and will be shown on Monday at 7 p.m., Tuesdays at 3 a.m. and 11 a.m., Thursdays at 7 p.m., and Fridays at 3 a.m. and 11 a.m. through November 4th. The forum will also be available for viewing on the internet through the City of Edina, www.edinamin.gov. Thank you for attending tonight's forum. Please remember to vote on Tuesday, November 4th. Good evening. Thank you.